Hello everyone, good afternoon. A little thinner crowd after a heavy lunch, I guess. In this next 10-15 minutes, I'm going to say what comes to my mind, and in the process, if I'm able to inject some new thoughts in your mind or say something controversial which creates some debate, I'll be happy. The whole thing about decarbonizing cement is a very big thing, is actually a very huge thing. I mean, you get an idea of the dimension when you look at the data. I'm just putting the two together. If you consider the fact that India has something like 500 million tons of cement capacity, and each ton of cement producing something like 600 kg of CO2, so you can do the math yourself and figure out what's the kind of CO2 that you are talking about. And if decarbonizing means making that zero, I mean, if decarbonizing means net zero, because that's a little bit of vagueness there. If decarbonizing really means making that net zero, it's huge. It's huge. And next few minutes, I'm going to try to communicate to you my feeling that it's not going to happen too soon. It's not going to happen in the kind of time frame that we are probably talking about. Climate change itself, not just for cement, but climate change for the planet itself is a very, very complex problem. It's a very complex problem, so much so that there is a term called wicked problem, wicked, naughty, wicked problem. And this term, wicked problem, applies to climate change. Most of the thought leaders in the world have called it a wicked problem. Side by side with, if I give you the other examples of wicked problem, you will then get an idea of the complexity involved. Climate change is a wicked problem. Income inequality or income disparity in the world is a wicked problem. Terrorism is a wicked problem. So climate change ranks alongside these problems today in the world in terms of wickedness. Why? I mean, what are wicked problems? Wicked problems are problems where the solution is not easy. Solution is sometimes not there. And wicked problems are also those where insufficient data is available or data keeps on changing because of new and new discoveries and new findings. So climate change is a wicked problem. That means that it is one of the toughest problems in the world to solve today. It's not that it will get solved by 2050 or 2070 because there are so many countries involved and so many dimensions involved. In case of cement, speakers before me in the morning mentioned, in case of cement, there may be some people here like financial analysts, etc., who may not know. So I would like to add, in case of cement, CO2 comes out, CO2 is emitted directly in two or three ways. One is that cement uses limestone, that is calcium carbonate, and in the kiln, calcium carbonate becomes calcium oxide and CO2. So that CO2 has to come because cement so far cannot be made without limestone. The other reason, other source of CO2 in cement is because fossil fuel is involved in firing the kiln, and that can be coal. In Gulf countries, it can be gas. In Rajasthan or Tamil Nadu, it can be lignite. But then it is fossil fuel and it emits CO2. So that's the energy that goes into calcination process. And then, as I mentioned in the morning, transportation. Somebody had said that cement is all about logistics. Cement business is all about logistics business, and therefore, transportation for incoming raw materials, transportation from outgoing finished product, everything involves transportation, and transportation means more and more CO2. So these are the areas where CO2 is emitted in cement. I mean, I'm not talking about the indirect emissions, which are different. And that gives an idea of how we can mitigate these CO2 emission. Not mitigate, how we can make it zero. Now, in a complex problem, in a wicked problem, there are bound to be different perspectives. Different perspectives exist in the world for climate change. And as we know, there is a country perspective and there is a global perspective. There is a developing world perspective and there is a developed nation perspective. All these perspectives are contrasting. They don't see eye to eye with each other. There is a rightist perspective and there is a leftist perspective. There is a conservative perspective and there is a green perspective. And there is also a national view for every nation for climate change strategy, and there is also an industry view. So cement industry, for example, all over the world can take one view, but that may not necessarily agree or merge with the national strategies of individual countries. Steel industry can take a view, but then that need not necessarily concur with the strategies of different countries where steel industry is big. For example, China. China may have a strategy for climate change, but then the steel industry globally may take a position which does not coincide with China's position. So all this makes the job of addressing climate change even more and more complicated, and thereby, that brings me to another point which you must have heard many times before, that this debate is raging between the developing world and the developed world. The developed world are saying that China, India, these countries are emitting their CO2, they are guzzling fuel, and they must stop now and all that. And these countries are responding by saying that you did your bit in generating CO2 when you were developing, and now you look at our population and look at the per capita emission of CO2. Per person emission of CO2, and we are far, far lower than you even today. And we have so much headroom to cover before we even reach your existing levels of per capita. So this debate of per capita and the debate of total quantum of CO2 emission is there to stay. It's not going to go away. So I said all this just to give you an idea of the dimensions of the problem and the complexity of the problem, and why am I calling it a wicked problem. Cement industry, what does it stand in terms of climate change? And why are we talking about decarbonizing cement industry, and why is it a priority? We know that steel, cement, and even before that, the thermal power industry driven by coal. These are biggest CO2 emitters. We know that there are many financial bodies in the world who have now stopped financing coal-fired thermal power plants. But India and China are still financing and setting up new coal-fired thermal power plants. That's because we are strong on coal and we need to exploit our reserves, and that's the cheapest form of power that we can get. Our per capita power consumption is very low and we need power for industrial development. So globally, coal is on its way out. In India, it is still not on its way out. But then, I guess, India also, thermal power plants will slowly, one can hazard a guess, in a matter of 20 years, possibly no new thermal power plant will be set up in India, and the existing ones will be slowly phased out. But then, what does cement stand? Before we become very defensive about cement industry, cement industry has been very, very defensive. Yes, we generate 7% of all the CO2 and all that, so we are not so good. But look at it from another point of view, another angle. We need to construct, we need to build houses, not just for the poor, but also for the rich, and construction activity will go on. So, if not cement, then what? That's another question to ask. Cement in itself is not a construction material. What is construction material is concrete, and bulk of the cement produced in India goes into concrete. So what can concrete be substituted by? We know the competing building materials globally are steel, wood, and glass, and aluminum, and last but not the least, cement, concrete. Now, if you take these 4 or 5 competing construction materials, and if you look at the carbon footprint of these 5, you will perhaps find that concrete is one of the lowest. So, I wouldn't say that cement industry should be defensive. And of course, I have served for some time in the cement industry, so I need to develop my own logic to defend the industry. That's another matter. But, we need not be so circumspect about cement industry's CO2 position. Now, how to reduce CO2 emission in cement? Now, I've already said, where is CO2 generated in the cement process? In producing cement and taking it to the customer, where is CO2 generated? Apart from the fact that the CO2 generation in cement has to be reduced, has to be made zero, and that's what decarbonizing means, there is also another angle from sustainability point of view. Sustainability requires reduction of consumption of natural resources, depleting natural resources. And cement uses what? Cement uses limestone. Just like we are concerned about the depleting global availability of petroleum, right? Fossil fuel or coal, or for that matter. And you can see the price of petroleum going up and down with all kinds of, volatility, because it's a depleting natural resource. We can't still make petroleum. Cement uses calcium carbonate, which we can't make. And calcium carbonate is not, limestone is not unlimited in the global, Earth's crust. So, there was one study by, and just to give you an idea of the magnitude, there was one study made some time back, and many here will know about the study, by the Geology Department of India, which said that at the current rate of expansion of the cement industry, after 2050, after 2050, there will be no known reserve of limestone left in India for setting up any new cement plant. Yeah? If it sounds shocking, then believe me, it is true. So apart from CO2, there is another sustainability angle. Can the industry sustain itself like this on its own? Is another question. So limestone availability, conserving limestone, using less and less limestone, making limestone go further is another sustainability objective of cement industry in addition to CO2 reduction and CO2 net zero. So I just mentioned this so that we keep it in the back of our mind that it's not just CO2 but it's also limestone, and mind you, limestone also, usage of limestone also emits CO2 ultimately in the kiln. Now around cement industry's journey towards net zero, there are a number of myths. And laymen, I don't think there are too many laymen here, but then, generally laymen have this idea that, AFR will take us there, fly ash will take us there, energy efficiency will take us there, and, biofuel will take us there. Let me assure you that none of this will take us there. For your information, anything that you put in the kiln has to generate energy, has to give energy for combustion, for calcination, and that has to generate CO2. Now, if we add AFR, alternative fuel, that only makes sure that we are not depleting our existing reserve of coal. But in terms of CO2 emission, it may be just here and there, 10%, 20% less, but not much more different. So AFR is a myth. When you are talking about net zero, efficiency in improvement of energy is a myth. Waste heat recovery is a myth. These are not going to take us to net zero. Okay? So these are all what is called incremental improvements or step changes and not disruptive changes. And we need disruptive change to take us to net zero. So what are the opportunities that we have if the task is not so clear? So what are the opportunities that we have in terms of achieving net zero? So there are two or three areas where some amount of work is going on in the world. But I must say, in my mind, those are not serious work. And I will tell you in a minute why it is not serious work. The two or three opportunities for making the cement industry net zero are around something called carbon sequestration and carbon absorption together. So capturing CO2 that is coming out of the kiln, storing that and absorbing that to produce calcium carbonate again is one such opportunity where some work is going on. The other one is work on synthetic cement, synthesizing cement from artificially produced material and not from limestone. That's the second one. And the third one, where there is, at least to my knowledge, not much work has been done at all, is the possibility of using hydrogen as a fuel in the kiln, which if at all it is ever done, it will not only involve huge innovation in the firing system in the kiln, but it will also involve huge innovation in the raw mix design of cement. So these are the three possibilities which today exist on the horizon, out of which the third one, hydrogen, is not even on the horizon. And some amount of work is going on the first two to see if we can make it commercial scale success. But the reason I say these are not serious work is because, I may be somewhat, factually not fully 100% correct here, but if you look at all the great innovations, commercial scale industrial innovations in the world, they have all been done and driven by the industry itself. Now, on CO2 sequestration and on the possibility of synthetic cement, most of the work that is going on in the world today are at universities. And even if there are some projects, some research work where industry is involved in a lukewarm manner in collaboration with an university. And that is why I say it is not serious, because for a serious industrial innovation to happen, it has to be driven by the industry. So why is it not happening? And I mean, today's topic is decarbonizing cement. So we can't just scratch the surface, right? We need to talk about why it is not happening. And again, these are my thoughts. Why these are not happening is because, there are some challenges. Before I talk about the challenges, I want to first say, which are the industries which are really innovating through huge investment of money on research and development. Let us take two examples, semiconductor industry and pharmaceutical industry, okay? And you can see that semiconductor industry and pharmaceutical industry are every 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, they are coming out with new and new offerings. They are investing into new molecules, new products, and they are, again, once something gets marketed, they start working on something new. And how is that happening? It's happening because on the new product offering, they are able to make good money, which is allowing them to invest not just in expansion in capacity, but also invest in research and development. So I gave these two examples, pharma and semiconductor, and now contrast that with cement. What's the first instinct of an industry? The first instinct of an industry is to survive. The second instinct of an industry to be profitable. The third instinct of an industry is to grow. And the fourth, and to my mind the last, is to grow profitably. For this to happen, instinctively, a cement company, and now imagine a cement company in India or a cement company in Europe or in China, in your own mind, and tell me, there are some financial analysts here. My friend is working on his laptop, but he can tell you that cement industry in India, with all this talk about cartelization and profiteering and all that, does not even make enough returns to be able to plow back the surplus into creating extra capacity for expansion for the future, leave alone a huge amount of investment for research and development on carbon sequestration and on synthesizing cement. So that's the contrast between two industries which can invest a lot on R&D, but here is an industry which is not globally. Even the Holcims of this world or Lafarges of this world or any Chinese company, to my knowledge, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they are not in-house investing substantial sums of money to work on carbon sequestration and synthesis of cement. That brings me to another interesting point. Why should a cement company invest in research for synthesizing cement? Because of CO2 net zero. In a situation where cement companies globally are sitting on limestone concessions, are sitting on limestone reserves, and they know that limestone reserve is a depleting resource, each and every cement company in the world considers limestone concessions to be an entry barrier for others to get into cement. So if they produce research to create synthesized cement, whom will it benefit? Given the current environment of intellectual property protection in the two largest cement producing countries in the world, India and China, do you think India and China are famous for intellectual property rights? Both India and China are not. China, of course, is worse than India. But given that probably 75% of cement globally is produced in India and China, if anybody in the world produces a synthesized cement, which countries will make the most use of it without paying a dime for the technology? India and China. So I am just debating here my own thoughts for you to think. Why is it that net zero, what are the 2 or 3 opportunities for net zero in India? And why is it that we are slow on that path, on those 2 or 3 opportunities? So here is the cement dilemma. Here is the dilemma in front of the cement industry, whether it is for a national cement industry, whether it is the global cement industry, or whether it is for one cement company. Which of these cement companies will, in the next 5-10 years, invest heavily in research to create a synthesized cement, non-limestone cement, or to sequester and absorb CO2? Answer yourself. The last challenge, if after all this is done, assuming that all this is done, I don't know what's going to happen in 2070. That's 50 years hence. And I would at least go to an astrologer or a fortune teller to know what's going to happen in 2070. I'm not going to be around, that's another matter. But I am talking about 20 years. That's what I can see. That's what I can see that, I may be around for another 20 years. So in 20 years dimension, what I'm talking about is in 20 years. So tell me, after hearing all this, if this happens, If there is a technology to produce synthesized cement, if there is a technology to carbon sequester and to absorb carbon in the next 5 years that comes out commercially viable, then who will pay the money for retrofitting? Somebody talked about it. Retrofitting the existing 500 million tons capacity in India to adopt to that technology, because that technology is going to be quite disruptive. It's not going to be just a, what Mr. Demla does here, goes and he's not here, but the today's technology suppliers, they can 10, 20, 15% of, additional throughput can be generated from any kiln by tweaking things here and there, right? But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, I think one of my colleagues said something like $14 million or something like that, 14 million or 14 billion. I think he made some calculation of 500 million tons capacity at $20 per ton capacity retrofitting. So that's the kind of money that will be required to retrofit the current capacity of India, and China will be 3 times that. So who's going to pay the money? Who's going to pay the money, meaning not as a grant, but who's going to finance that? So that's the last challenge after we have crossed that bridge of developing the technology for carbon sequestration and or synthesized cement, and then comes the need for that finance. That's the last challenge. So, to sum up, the world is waiting with bated breath for the disruptive battery technology to come, disruptive power storage technology to come. The world is waiting, and it might come, not too late from today. To give a big push to solar and wind power and also to electric vehicles. The popularity of electric vehicles will go up when the range increases, and the range will go up when the battery is improved and it becomes cheaper. So, world is waiting for that battery to come, and it might come in a matter of 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The world is also waiting for that battery, because only with that kind of storage solution we can store solar power. Today we can't store solar power on a bulk scale. We are talking about megawatts and gigawatts. Megawatts and gigawatts of solar power, the day it can be stored and that battery is available to us, coal will be a thing of the past. And that day is not very far off, maybe 5 years. So, world is waiting with bated breath for such battery technology to come. Yeah? But the world is also waiting expectantly for a disruptive technology to come in synthesizing cement or in CO2 absorption technology. But for this one, we may have to wait a little longer. Thank you.